presentation with a picture speaks 1,000 words. Or one devotee, a PhD in education, Urmila Dasi, said she learned something from me, that when making presentations, visuals help. This has lots of visuals. Let us begin by offering our pranam mantras to Srila Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Prasarine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paschatya Desatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Vivasadi Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. During this past weekend, there was a little seminar on the topic of Vaishnava etiquette, and the topic that I selected was respect, because without respect, how do you have relationships? You have something, you have a mess, but not a relationship. So a foundation for all relationships is respect. And the culture of respect is part of Vaishnava etiquette. And then there's an obstacle to respect or to bhakti, and that is envy. So the presentation is based on one chapter from Srimad Bhagwatam, Canto 3, Chapter 29. And the speaker is Kapila Dev, and he's speaking to Devahuti. I think it's good to give a little background. The first several cantos of Srimad Bhagwatam are describing the process of creation, Canto 2, Canto 3. And subsequent to the process of creation, there's the maintenance of the creation. And one of the ways that the maintenance of creation is overseen is the manus are manifested. And then, so there's 14 manus in each day of Brahma, and the first of those 14 manus is Swayambhuva Manu. And Swayambhuva Manu had 3 daughters. They kind of sound alike names: Devahuti, Prasuti, and Akuti. And Devahuti is the first one to be spoken about at length. Devahuti, daughter of Swayambhuva Manu, heard about Kardama Muni. Kardama Muni was one of the direct sons of Lord Brahma, and a great yogi, a brahmana, and a great devotee. And she had a hankering, a desire to become his wife. So when an introduction was made between the two, Kardama Muni agreed on 2 conditions. Well, mainly one condition. The one condition is, when there's a son that's born that's of age to maintain you, then I'm going to return back to the forest. And she was okay with that. And they married. And an incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead became their son, Kapila. And after he became mature, sure enough, Karamuni went back to the forest. And Devahuti is pictured here in the palace because by mystic power, Karamuni could do all kinds of things, and one of the things he did with his mystic power is he manifested a palace for himself and Devahuti. He wasn't attached at all to the palace, and he went to the forest again. But there's Devahuti and Kapila, and she understands because he's a brahmachari, he's not going to stay so long. So she was in anxiety, concerned, and so she began presenting a number of questions, and the result of those so many questions is like 10 chapters from Canto 3. The main subject that he speaks about, as you all know, Kapila is well known for his teachings in Sankhya. Sankhya philosophy is a way of describing, for example, categories of matter and categories of spirit. Same thing that we find in the beginning part of chapter 2, Bhagavad Gita. It's Sankhya. Categories of matter, categories of spirit. We belong to the category of spirit. So in Bhagavad Gita, it's very simple. Then again in chapter 7, then again in chapter 13, touching on the topic. But Kapila Dev doesn't just touch on the topic, he expands it thoroughly. And there's a purpose for Sankhya. It's not just make your head spin trying to learn all these, how does this piece fit together with that piece fit together? You end up with the universe. It's not just that. It's to understand that everything comes from one source, the absolute truth as the one source. And then there's this and that and the other and pieces that come from the source, makes up the universe. But the purpose of that is not just information. The purpose of that is, as in Bhagavad Gita, to move from Sankhya to Bhakti. So that's what chapter 29 is. The title of chapter 29 is Explanation of Devotional Service. Properly, if one becomes a qualified student or one who's hearing attentively and studying attentively Kapila's teachings, that's where it's going. It's bhakti. So in the beginning, everything about how to achieve complete success in the process of devotional service is explained in this chapter. And a quick presentation. He starts with explaining what devotional service is. He gives a definition of pure devotional service. And then he expresses to attain that devotional service and pure devotional service. He gives 4 verses that are the process, and then he describes what are the obstacles to achieve, be successful in that process, and then how to remove those obstacles. And then he circles back to describe gradations of living entities, and then pure devotional service once again. That's how the chapter is structured. So, respect is a major theme in chapter 29. And when Kapila Deva is speaking, according to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he's deliberately expressing exaggerated anger. Now that's his commentary. If you didn't read his commentary, you wouldn't feel that anger or sense the anger. But here's why. And the why is because people superficially say, yes, I follow bhakti, but in reality they violate fundamental principles of bhakti. And that fundamental principle is respect of all living entities, or respect for all living entities. And he has a very nice way of presenting it, or going into that topic, Kapila Dev. And, for example, after describing pure devotional service, he describes how to achieve it, and he gives a sadhana. There are 4 verses of sadhana. And then in those 4 verses of sadhana, one of the items is deity worship. But persons who engage in deity worship and disrespect, lack of respect is disrespect, other living entities, that is, there's the deity, and there's the expansion of the deity in the form of the deity in the heart, or Paramatma in the heart. So I worship the deity, but I don't pay attention to the living entities who are carrying the same deity in their heart. Different form, but the same Supreme Person. And that's what makes him angry, or that's the pretense. Violation makes Kapila angry. Here's a verse. This is text 21 in chapter 29. And he is describing those persons that worship the deity but neglect others. He calls them, their practice is vidambanam, or pretense, or imitation. Translation. So Kapila is speaking to his mother. Imagine your mother, and you're speaking to your son is speaking to you, and he's identifying himself in very clear language. He's the Supreme Person. I'm present in every living entity as the Supersoul. If someone neglects or disregards that Supersoul everywhere and engages himself in the worship of the deity in the temple, that is simply imitation, vidambanam. We'll see that word multiple times going forward. And then you see another word in blue letters, avagyaya. So this is the neglect or disregard or not paying proper respect to living entities that have Supersoul within their heart. They're worshiping him in his deity form, but not acknowledging the same Supreme Lord is within the heart of other living entities. By just neglecting them, this is imitation. So the illustration is clear on the left. That's Supersoul. And the same Supersoul is within the heart of every living entity, every species, everything. He's the all-pervasive Supersoul. Here's Srila Prabhupada's purport. Gentlemen, if you want to see the screen, you're going to have to sit over here so you can see the screen. If you don't want to see the screen, that's okay. Come on in. It's lots of space. Front row seat. Look at this. In purified consciousness or Krishna consciousness, one sees the presence of Krishna everywhere. If, therefore, one only engages in deity worship in the temple and does not consider other living entities, then he is on the lowest grade of devotional service. One who worships the deity in the temple and does not show respect to others is a devotee on the material platform in the lowest stage of devotional service. A devotee should try to understand everything in relationship with Krishna and try to serve everything in that spirit. To serve everything means to engage everything in the service of Krishna. If a person is innocent and does not know his relationship with Krishna, an advanced devotee should try to engage him in the service of Krishna. One who is advanced in Krishna consciousness can engage not only the living being, but everything in the service of Krishna. So it's a nice painting. This is Krishna. Krishna's all over the place. He's in the trees, in the camel, he's in the fruit in the trees, in the peacock, he's everywhere. Ultimate success. So here's a reference to a verse from Canto 1, Chapter 2, Text 6. A very nice chapter. Canto 1, Chapter 2 is a fantastic chapter. Savai punk, let's chant the verse together. Savai punk samparo dharmo yato bhaktiradhok saje ahaitaki apratihata yayatma suprasidati. Translation. The supreme occupation or dharma for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendent Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. So emphasis goes at the moment to suprasidati, prasana and suprasana, happiness and complete happiness, complete satisfaction. That at the soul platform. Atma, suprasidati. So that's the teaching in chapter 1. Here's somebody that's not a Jiva Goswami, but they're saying the same thing. Why look any further if you've discovered complete satisfaction? Or from Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that one can easily let go of some inferior activity if one has a higher taste. Param drishtva nivartate. Vishaya vinivartante. You know the verse? Nirahara shadehinam rasavarjam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate. Vishaya means sense indulgence. Those of you that just came in, if you don't want to see the screen, stay right where you are. If you want to see the screen, we have front row seats right over here. All right, nice going. That's courtesy. Thank you. Our host has to sit by the door so he can greet guests that come and everything. Okay. According to Bhagavad Gita's, Krishna's teaching in Bhagavad Gita, if you have a higher taste, param drishtva, then you can easily give up the lesser taste. It's easy. It's like very simple. Very simple. You know, if you have like someone serving a meal and there's something you don't like, eat your spinach or something like that. So you eat some spinach, but there's some things you really like. You eat the things you really like. It's not indulging in the thing you don't like so much. That's easy. So many examples. Little children can play for hours with some little gadget. And if I tried to play for hours with a little gadget, there's another taste. So doesn't have the same appeal. Pram drishtva nivartate. One can give up the lesser taste easily by a higher taste. And Vishaya is definitely a lesser taste. So, that brings complete satisfaction of the self. Some of you know, some of you may not know. Some of you know Jiva Goswami. For those of you that may not know Jiva Goswami, he's one of the principal 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. We'll back up a little bit. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared in this world to teach the chanting of the holy name, the Sankirtan movement. That was his principal gift. And along with the chanting, there were teachings. He didn't write books, but he taught disciples, and he instructed the disciples to write the books and empowered them to write the books, empowered them to understand everything that he said. And so one of those, 6 of those persons were specifically assigned to Vrindavan as their place of residence. And while they were there, they wrote books. They did many other things. And one of those 6 Goswamis was Jiva Goswami, and he really liked Srimad Bhagwatam. He liked Srimad Bhagwatam so much he wrote 4 commentaries. Try writing a Vyasa Puja offering. See how long it takes. He wrote 4 commentaries on Srimad Bhagwatam. And one of those commentaries was like Prabhupada's. It was verse by verse, called Krama Sandarbha, step by step, Krama Sandarbha. And then another one of those Sandarbhas was topic by topic. And he clustered those topics into 6 divisions and then wrote 6 Sandarbhas, Shat Sandarbhas. And the last of the 6 was Priti Sandarbha. Priti is another word for prema, love, affection. So this is a reference from Priti Sandarbha, the very first verse of this whole. And Priti Sandarbha is thick; it's like that thick, with commentary. Here's the verse: the goal of the human being is attaining happiness and destroying suffering. Complete happiness and destruction of suffering is attained only by priti, for the Lord. Very sensible. And then the rest of the book is explaining the introduction to the book, introductory verse. So this same, complete happiness, atma suprasidati, and destruction of suffering. It's like you turn the light on and darkness is dispelled. Inversely proportionate, as they say in math. So, by increasing light, darkness is dispelled. By increasing bhakti, ignorance and suffering, because what's the root of suffering? It's ignorance. We'll hear that as we go further. So that's our goal. That's the goal of Sankhya. That's the goal of Kapila's teachings. That's what we're spending time. However, somehow or other it seems like devotional service may not be working for us despite our practice. Meaning, yes, there's some relief of the distress of material existence, but we hear about the happiness or the attainment of higher stages of consciousness, and we may not be at those higher stages of consciousness despite our chanting and our reading and our practice. Why? That's what Kapila Deva is discussing. Here's one of his answers. You see on the left side, there's 3 modes of nature. When we start our devotional service, inevitably we start in the modes of nature. We cannot suddenly jump to a transcendental level, so our devotional service is faulty due to its being performed with ulterior motivations. Goodness, passion, ignorance within the modes of nature. And the mix, even when there's any one of those 3, there's a mix of the others. And that's the starting point. Here's a little chart, if you like charts. There's the 3 modes on the left. And then the motivation. Motivation was mentioned. So that's, the motivation of a person who's in tamas, destruction, pride, anger, get back, envy. The Sanskrit phrase that's used in this chapter 29 is bina drik. Bina means separate, just like Bina Prakritir Ashtada. Krishna speaks of his 8 separated material energies. Prakriti, Bina Prakriti. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. That's 8. So Bina, it means separate. Seeing separately. Seeing separately. Not seeing the source, not seeing the supreme, just seeing what I want or what I don't want, without any compassionate feelings. So then, passion, everyone knows that one, desire for enjoyment or opulence, showing one's greatness, because that brings one happiness to show one's greatness. And notice on the right side, there's the same phrase is used both with rajas and sattva. That is pratak bhava, or the spirit or desire for objects other than the Lord, that's rajas, and desire for liberation other than pleasing the Lord, because that's bhakti, pleasing the Lord. So those in the mode of goodness, starting point is they're suffering from karma, and they want freedom from that suffering. Same as we said for Priti Sandarbha. People want happiness and relief from distress. A little sharing. One of the activities that I personally dedicate myself to is visiting universities. Where there are clubs, programs conducted at universities, go to that place and be a guest speaker for whoever's conducting that program. And generally when I'm invited to go to those places, they'll either ask me for a topic, or they'll ask me to make some suggestions for a list of topics. So commonly I give like a list of 5 to 10 topics. You want to guess which topic is most popular? The one that's most popular? Overcoming negative emotions. Art of meditation. There's a reason, because there's a lot of suffering, and they don't like it. If you don't like suffering, I want freedom from suffering, please, and the emotions that go with that suffering, please. Thank you very much. So how do I get there? So sattva is persons who are striving in that direction, and one of the ways they do is making dutiful offerings. Dutiful in the sense of it's because it's a duty, not because I have love for the Lord. I do because of it's a duty. It's good. I do good things because it's good to do good things. I don't do bad things because it's bad to do bad things. Dutiful. And then there's a goal, commonly, dharma, artha, kama. Because if I get artha from nice dharma, I want to enjoy. And that's the carrot that is on the end of the stick, is the searching for the happiness that comes from performing duties nicely. I mean, it's saying it kind of grossly, but even if it's subtly, that is a tendency in human society for people who are religious. They have an expectation they'll prosper because of being a religious person. And so we follow this formula, that ritual, and it'll bring prosperity. Artha. Dharma, artha. And then the purpose is kama. And so what's on the right side is the objects. It could be physical objects, or it can be liberation. As that's an aspiration. I'm at the center, not Krishna's at the center. So here's a nice, straight from the Sanskrit, and then the translation from chapter 29. I'll read. The manifestation of Unadulterated devotional service is exhibited when one's mind is at once attracted to hearing the transcendental name and qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is residing in everyone's heart. Just as the water of the Ganges flows naturally down towards the ocean, such devotional ecstasy, and uninterrupted by any material condition, flows towards the Supreme Lord. Now, some of you are probably a little bit familiar with Queen Kunti's prayers, Canto 1, Chapter 8. Prayers of Queen Kunti. They're fantastic. So she has a verse that says exactly this. She makes the same comparison. Just like the Ganges flows forever downstream towards the sea, similarly that my mind flow forever unobstructed towards you. And that's pure devotional service. She's praying in a nice way for pure devotional service. But she's already a pure devotee. But she's speaking directly to Krishna, appealing to him for that pure devotion to enter her heart. And the immediate next verse, to prove that this is the highest stage of consciousness, Kapila Dev gives an example. A pure devotee does not accept any kind of liberation. He lists the 5 kinds of liberation, even though they are offered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And a classic example of that is Dhruva Maharaj. He started with material motivation, big time. He wanted to get back because his stepmother insulted him. And I can't sit on the lap of my father. Tell you what, I'm going to get Lord Vishnu to give me a kingdom better than my father, better than my father's father, better than my father's father's father, which means the abode of Vishnu, because Vishnu is the abode of Lord Brahma. From Vishnu comes Lord Brahma. From Brahma comes his Uttanapada, his father. He wanted the kingdom of God. He's a little brazen boy. But Lord Vishnu appeared after his severe austerities and his chanting of his mantra and so forth, and benedicted him. Tell me what you want. It's yours. No. Seeing you and being with Narada, that's all I want. No, nothing material, thank you. Not even liberation, not even liberation. Dhruva. So what is one supposed to do to achieve this state of consciousness? That's the good question, isn't it? And, devotional service. So he, in 4 verses, do you have a Srimad Bhagwatam in your house? Yes? Could you bring Canto 3, chapter 29? Starting with verse 15. So I'm going to read just the verses. I should have prepared this. It's sadhana. He's describing not the sadhya, not the goal, the destination, because that's already been identified. It's this state of pure consciousness that's already been described. So what's the process to get there? As soon as he brings the book, I'll read the verses. Making a conclusion of sadhana, Kapila repeats something. This is now text 20. Because those verses, you see, they're 15 through 18. So now we're going to go to text 20. 3, 29, 14. 29, chapter 29. 14. It's way deep into the book. As the chariot of air carries an aroma from its source and immediately catches the sense of smell, similarly, one who constantly engages in devotional service in Krishna consciousness can catch the Supreme Soul, who is equally present everywhere. Now, there's emphasis, repeated emphasis in Kapila's teachings. Thank you very much. Thank you. That's good. That's good. About the presence of the Supreme Soul everywhere. Because that's going to lead to, the obstacles for achieving pure devotional service. But a pure devotee is one who experiences that. And even he is describing, it's like air carrying aroma. So the metaphor is used in the Bhagavad Gita. The mind carries different conceptions of life, just like air carries aroma. You heard that one? I'll say it again. Just as air carries aroma, the mind carries conceptions of life. You have a conception of life? We all do. Where'd you get it? From association. And supposing you get some different association, you may have a different conception of life. And then you get a little older and you have a different conception of life. In a different association, you have a different conception. So, just like air, supposing air is passing over a rose garden or, in springtime. It's very fragrant. Supposing downwind, that same air passes over a garbage dump. It stinks. The air is neutral, but it carries aroma. Similarly, the mind carries conceptions. And there is a conception of Krishna consciousness where the mind can carry one and can to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's yoga. So now I'm going to read the process that he's describing, how to get to pure devotional service, starting with text 15. A devotee must, I'll just read the verses, execute his prescribed duties, which are glorious, without material profit, without excessive violence. One should regularly perform one's devotional activities. The devotee should regularly see my statues, deity, in the temple, touch my lotus feet, and offer worshipful paraphernalia and prayer. He should see in the spirit of renunciation from the modes of goodness, and see every living entity as spiritual. The pure devotee should execute devotional service by giving the greatest respect to the spiritual master and the acharyas. He should be compassionate to the poor and make friendship with persons who are his equals. This is like Madhyama Adhikari. Madhyama Adhikari is supposed to worship the Supreme, make friends with peers, be kind to the innocent, and avoid the demons. Madhyama, middle stage. That's us. But all his activities should be executed under regulation and with control of the senses. Final, a devotee should always try to hear about spiritual matters and should always utilize his time in chanting the holy name of the Lord. Now, when he's speaking at the early stages of Satya Yuga. It's not that in Satya Yuga they didn't chant the holy name. The holy name is for all the four yugas, but especially significantly important for this age. Always. Dhruva, the early stages of Satya Yuga, he's chanting Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. That was his mantra. So chanting is for all ages. That's the point. His behavior should always be straightforward and simple, and although he is not envious but friendly to everyone, he should avoid the company of persons who are not spiritually advanced. So this is, this Madhyama position. He's describing the sadhana for a Madhyama, the practices for someone in this beginning stage. And it can bring one to the stage of perfection. So this is verse 21. Now, the characteristics of someone who has achieved pure devotional service, we'll hear more about this as we go forward. When our consciousness reaches a certain stage, or Brahmabhuta, then the activities in devotional service obtain the power to bring the soul to the Lord. Not much endeavor is required to be near the Lord. One's subjective experience of devotional service becomes increasingly powerful. So who knows the Brahmabhuta verse? Someone raised their hand if you know the Brahmabhuta verse. Could I hear it? Mad Bhaktim. So there's 4 parts. It's describing to Mad Bhaktim Labhate Param. One achieves the stage of devotional service when Brahmabhuta means self-realization. So that's the starting point, according to this verse. Brahmabhuta Prasanatma, that we heard that verse, Suprasidati Prasanatma, same meaning. Happiness within, happiness on the Atma platform. Prasanna Atma. Brahmabhuta Prasanatma. And one who has that Prasanatma, na sochati na kangsati. They're not hankering or lamenting. The same as that earlier message. When you're feeling full, you don't need something. The sense of fullness is you're full. Na sochati na kangsati. Then Samaksarveshu bhuteshu, seeing all living entities equally. Seeing all living entities equally doesn't mean you can't distinguish anything. You can't see one form of life from another form of life. We don't go embrace a tiger. We make distinctions about forms of life. But the soul within, that's the sama. Because they're all part and parcel of the same Supreme. And part and parcel is tiny angsa of the Supreme. So that's the sameness. Sama sarveshu bhuteshu mad bhaktim labhate param. A classic example, of course, is Prahlad. And he was in such a state of consciousness, nothing could disturb him, nothing could harm him. Although he was subjected to many dangers, but he survived those dangers in a state of Krishna consciousness. And the message here is, once there, there may be some endeavor to get to that stage, but once in that stage, it's spontaneous. In our conditioned state, it's almost impossible task to always remember Krishna. Our devotional service doesn't have that power. So if you're supposed to have that, but you don't have that, what? Catch-22. You damned if you do and damned if you don't. Kapila explains, this is 21 now, what causes the power of devotional service to be blocked? Here it is. I am present in every living entity as the Supersoul. If someone neglects or disregards that Supersoul everywhere and engages himself in the worship of the deity in the temple, that is simply adambanam, or imitation. That's not complimentary. There's nothing wrong with imitation. Just like a child, commonly, they'll imitate what mom and dad do. If mom and dad go to the temple and come before the deity and offer pranams to the deity and pay obeisances or offer something in the hundi or bring some flowers or make some gift to the deity, the children, just naturally, they'll imitate. That's how people learn. You want to raise a question? Huh? Imitation? Nice question. It means you see and you try to replicate that which you see. A behavior that you see in someone, and then you imitate that behavior that you see in someone. Like, here's a behavior. So if we come, there's an altar in the front room. If we offer obeisances before, or pranams, or folded palms before the deity, then if you see that, you may do the same. That's imitation. It's maybe not necessarily with the same understanding and knowledge and purpose, but it's a behavior, and imitating the behavior. Suppose there's other kinds of imitation. Supposing somebody's a thief. Some little person sees this person's a thief and that person's a thief, so I guess I'm going to be a thief. Imitate the thieving propensity. Bad things can also be imitation. Good things can also be imitation. The point is, one's understanding of what that is, and the purpose behind it, is not complete, not mature yet. But it's a beginning. Okay? Okay. Good. So in the next, starting with text 21, 22, 23, 24, those first 4 verses, 4 times he repeats the same message. And the same message is, unless you understand that the Lord is in every living entity and respects every living entity, then you're not going to achieve anything in devotional service. You can, or it'll be very restricted, very much blocked. Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur and Jiva Goswami, these 2 very important acharyas in our line, when they make comments on these 4 verses, they say these 4 are describing stages of envy. We'll go through it slowly. On the left, there's the person who's a little haughty. And he may be with another person, but he's not paying much attention to the other person because he's kind of haughty, little conceited and proud. So there's avagya. You saw that word in verse 21. Avagya. Little arrogant, or neglecting others because of that arrogance. And then it gets a little darker. Upeksha is turning away. We'll go through this slowly because it's important. It's thicknesses of envy, according to our acharyas. Dvesha, hate or animosity, and then criticism or offense. Sadhuninda. So we're going to go through these 4. You'll find these terms in the writings of our acharyas. There's these 2 acharyas. Bhaktivinoda Thakur also elaborately discusses. We'll hear what he has to say about these. Each stage grows more severe, both internally and externally. So here's text 21 for the 3rd time. Avagya means looking down upon others. There's the Sanskrit vidambanam, or imitation. So there's a fellow, he's worshipping the deity nicely, and then over there behind him is a sadhu, over by him is a dog, over there is a cow, over there's some other people, and he's just ignoring them completely, paying no attention, although the same Supreme Lord is within the heart of all these other entities, all these other living entities, and he's just ignoring them. So ava gya. Ava means looking down, like an avatar, one who descends, avatar. Ava, it's the meaning of that phrase. And gya means to know. So ava gya means to look down upon others, or condescension, or feeling oneself a little above others. And that's a type of envy. And it's a type of envy because within that person, there's Supreme Soul. And what makes me better than the other person, it may be something to do with the covering, but it's more my attitude. And ultimately, it's my attitude towards the Supreme. It appears as a haughtiness or pride. Outwardly, nothing may be said, but there's a feeling. So maybe you have had experience being with people like that. They hold themselves a little aloof, and they can be more exaggerated, but they think highly of themselves, and they're, kind of isolate themselves from others. And they do some worship, they do some devotional something or other, but according to this teaching of Kapila Dev, and our acharyas describe it, it's not complete. We'll say it's immature. So here's a person who's worshiping the deity, but ignoring the other individual who's also there, as if they don't even exist. According to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, this one of these commentators, he says that this avagya is a trait that weakens bhakti. Just like clouds in the sky, supposing it's not night, but it's daytime, and the sun is shining. But sometimes there's a little light clouds in the sky. The sun is always shining the same brightness and heat and light, but that same brightness may not get to us because there's some cloud covering. And sometimes it's thicker clouds, and sometimes it's stormy clouds, and sometimes it's hurricane. You can't see the sun at all. Although there's light, you can't see the sun at all. Similarly, so this avagya weakens the power of bhakti. Our experience of the power of bhakti, not the power of bhakti, because bhakti is all powerful, but it weakens our experience of, because of this offense of looking down upon others. Now there's a very nice story that illustrates this. It's a famous story in Vrindavan. How many here have been to Vrindavan? Okay. For those of you that haven't, may you sometime soon go to Vrindavan. When you go with others, then you can see everything in Vrindavan in a very glorious way. So this is a Vraja story. That there's the fellow on the right is an image of a Brahmana from West Bengal. Nothing against Bengalis, but that's where he was from. And very learned, very wealthy, a little haughty. He was a little proud of his accomplishments. And he, at a certain point in his life, he decided, now I've fulfilled my purpose in life, let me go to Vrindavan and take shelter of a guru and receive diksha from that guru. So he went to Vrindavan. And when he went to Vrindavan, he found a very nice teacher. And he was requesting the teacher to give him initiation. But the teacher wasn't giving him initiation. He wasn't exactly saying no, and he wasn't exactly saying yes either. He just kept putting him off. And then at a certain point, he said, very well, you're very enthusiastic, consistently enthusiastic. I'll give you Diksha in 1 week. But you have to bring back someone who is lesser than you. It was examining him. And so he thought, no problem, I'm this, proud guy. I'm looking down at other people, everyone's lower than me because I'm this proud guy. But because he was in Vrindavan, he thought, maybe if I go to the Bungi colony, Bungi means sweet streepers. So he went to the Bungi colony and he thought, I'll bring this fellow to my guru. But then he started contemplating, wait a minute, this individual, he's, poor and shabby, but he's always in touch with the dust of Vrindavan, and he's been doing this his whole life. So he must have become very purified by being in contact with the dust of Vrindavan. So I can't identify him as lower than me. So then he thought of a cow. And then he was going to bring the cow to meet his guru, say, this is an entity that's less than me. But he thought, a cow, she just eats grass, and she gives nourishing milk to others without any payment, and just, I'm not like that. So I can't bring the cow. I know, I'll bring a dog. So he was contemplating on bringing a dog to his guru. But he thought about the qualities of a dog, and a dog is faithful and known. They're well known for being very faithful to their master. And I'm not like that. So then he thought, what am I going to do? How am I going to find this person lower than myself? He thought, I can bring him my stool. But then he thought about that one and said, I'm just eating prasadam here in Vrindavan, and that's what my stool is, just prasadam transformed, so I can't do that. Maybe, as you see in the painting, next to where his broom is, there's a worm, maybe a worm in the stool. I'll bring the worm from my stool and bring that to my teacher. He thought, yeah, but the stool is disgusting, but the worm is able to transform it to something that's very useful and can fertilize the land and grow nice crops, and people can benefit so much, and I can't do something like that. I'm not capable. So after a week, he came back to his guru and said, I can't find anyone lower than me. Guru gave him Diksha. Because before he was avagya, a little haughty, and he detected it. He wasn't like, prancing around or something, but there was a scent, a fragrance of something that wasn't nice. But when he became humble, he gave him Diksha. There's a similar, different but similar, narration in Mahabharata. The painting on the left, that's Dronacharya. Dronacharya was the military guru for the young boys in the Kuru dynasty. And as he was training them in military skills, there's, of course, it's not just the skill of something, it's the character, how to use that skill. So he decided one day, he requested Yudhisthira to go find an inferior person in the kingdom. So like that Brahmin, he couldn't find one. And then for Duryodhana, he had the opposite task. The opposite task is find someone superior. Duryodhana couldn't find anyone superior. And Yudhisthira couldn't find anyone inferior. And they came back and reported that to Drona. And so Drona contemplated. This Yudhisthira, he is humility personified. Besides, he is skilled in military skills. By his character, he'll become an excellent king, the head of the Kuru dynasty. And Duryodhana, if he became the king, he would destroy everything. The dynasty would be destroyed with him in the head of it. just by this one thing, not by how good their military skills were, but by their character. So this avagya is meant for us. The stage of humility that Yudhishthira, they can't find someone inferior. Before this, according to Kapila, our devotional service is vidambanam, or imitation, or pretense. So Kapila wants us. He wanted Devahuti, but he wants us also to understand this innocent, so-called innocent haughtiness is not okay. It blocks bhakti. It has the power, it's powerful. To that which is supremely powerful, the power, our subjective experience of that is diminished. The result of such attitude is that our pretense grows more and more. That leads to the next one. The natural power of bhakti is diminished. And if you are sensitive, just a little sharing. Somebody in North Carolina was watching these classes that we were conducting in Naperville, and he had, he thought very deeply about this particular avagya, and he said, I didn't notice it was there, but now it's becoming very noticeable, and it's just it rules my life. Kind of proud of being able to do this and that. And it's natural. And our modern, it's sorry to say, but our modern education helps to produce that kind of haughtiness. Because in order to, just like some of you probably know, because I've gotten like 4 letters recently. In India, the system is when you're in 10th grade, there's a national exam. Do you know about the national exam? You don't know about it? You had to do it? Yeah. So, and then, it's a big deal. It lasts for like 10 days. It's not just a one-day exam. I don't know what all goes on, but, it's the system. And then afterwards, it's going to determine what your placement is for the final 2 years of high school. Yep. So it's like a big deal for 10th grader, this big national exam. So supposing somebody does well, probably many youngsters do very well. They may become a little proud. And then, the education system kind of encourages that, the competition, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so that they go on to some higher, high school studies, and then entry into college is more likely, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's just like this tendency becomes built into the system. America has its own system, but it's just built into the system. Without the formality of establishing character. Then you have a person that has smarts, but they don't have character. That can be dangerous. It happens, doesn't it? And that feeling is, devotional service is not all that I expected it to be in terms of satisfaction. Yen atma suprasidati. Atma suprasidati. I'm not feeling that satisfaction. So if we're not feeling that satisfaction, we're going to look for that satisfaction elsewhere. Like holding myself up so people can appreciate me. Little arrogance. And it's just part of the product. If bhakti is blocked, if access to the Supreme is blocked, I'm going to look for my happiness elsewhere. Thank you. Here's another tough one. Even if there's a slight difference between what we are doing when we're with others and when we're alone, this is also vidambana, or hypocrisy. And it grows. in the disrespectful attitude towards others, and that's the next stage. So at the earlier stages, it's easier to correct. When it becomes more mature, it's more difficult to correct. Prabhupada's very simple formula. If you start to feel that you're higher than someone, catch yourself and see their connection with Krishna. As they're connected with Krishna, how are you above them? As they're connected with Krishna, as you're connected with Krishna. So we have to see everything connected with Krishna. That's the message. That's the theme of this whole chapter. Bring our consciousness in that way, so we're seeing the connection of all things, people and things, with Krishna. And now comes the second stage, or the further advanced stage of this avagya. And that is, the haughtiness now turns to, I want to avoid others. Upeksha. Here's the verse in text 22. One who worships the deity of Godhead in the temples, but does not know that the Supreme Lord as Paramatma is situated in every living entity's heart, must be in ignorance, and is compared to one who offers oblations and ashes. Now generally, swaha, you take ghee and you pour ghee into the flame. There's a very nice description of all this in Canto 4, Chapter 1, the genealogy of living entities. And Swaha is the name of one of the daughters of the great kings. And Swaha had 45 sons. So 45 sons, yeah. And those 45 sons, Swaha was married to Agni, daughters of Daksha. And Agni married Swaha, and they had 45 sons, and they're all fire gods. So Prabhupada explains, those who are impersonalists, when they're doing yajna, they're not honoring the Supreme, they're honoring the gods, the fire gods, and say them by name, but they're offering ghee into the fire, offering to the fire gods, 45 in number. But supposing you don't offer to the flame, you offer to the ashes. That's what Kapila is saying. It's compared persons who don't see Supersoul, the God within everyone. It's like offering ghee into ashes. Upeksha means, due to stronger envy, one wants to avoid the person one is envious of. Meaning, when it's the lighter, you're fine being with this person, that person, the other person. You feel a little haughty, but you're not like despising them. But when envy becomes stronger, you don't like associating with that person. We see that sometimes, in the world and even in devotee circles. One feels some unpleasant feelings about all of that. One consciously justifies that the other is bad. This is advanced disease of envy. Remember, they may be wrong, but the Lord is still in their heart. It's like, this is a nice test of how we're doing in our Krishna consciousness. Like don't hold a grudge, but positive. See the Supreme Lord within, because that's the teaching for devotion. The Lord is in their heart. Even if there's one person towards whom we harbor such an attitude, it's like there's no result, like putting ghee in ashes. Sometimes this is the phenomena. Our devotional practice, we chant and chant, we read and we read and read, and we don't feel there's a very substantial result. Like running, but you're running on a treadmill and you don't go anywhere. Kind of like that. For a number of years, we've been conducting it's like a japa retreat, but we call it the Festival of the Holy Name. And some persons, maybe there's some persons here in St. Louis community congregation that have been practicing devotional service for a number of years. And anyone going to raise their hand and say, I've made very substantial advancement in my so many years of chanting and practicing a devotional service? No one's going to say that. Probably no one's going to say that. And so one of the seminars at the Festival of the Holy Name was, I'm reading and I'm chanting, but I'm not making much progress. So this is not the only, but this is a contributing factor. Why not making progress? Because there's something blocking the power of bhakti. There's nothing wrong with the bhakti. There's something wrong with the attitude towards other living entities, seeing God is within other living entities. It's a serious matter. If you want to make progress in devotional service, better hear Kapila Dev, because he's explaining it. And some people leave devotional service because they feel that they're not making progress. So here's a fellow pouring ghee and ashes. Ghee upon the ashes. And then in their heart, there's these other feelings. Animosity and resentment and feeling distant towards this other person. And then it goes darker. Dvesha. Actively hating. So the act of hating is, here's the translation of his verse. This is 23. One who offers me respect, but is envious of the bodies of others. Notice in the Sanskrit, the second line, bina darshanaha. Bina darshanaha. That's, envious of other bodies. Or the bodies of others, and therefore a separatist, bina darshana, never attained peace of mind because of its inimical behavior towards other living entities. So how we regard other living entities is really important in bhakti. A worship, mad arpanam, worship the Supreme. That's important. One of the four things in that particular verse. Manmana bhava mad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru. Four things. Mami vaishati satya pratijani paryosi me. One can hold Krishna very dear through these four things. But if you do the worship of the deity form, but don't have proper regard for other living entities, I mean, I'm repeating, but the repetition is for clarity. Will never attain peace of mind because of this inimical attitude towards other living entities. Or, this is not a Bhagwatam verse, it's a secular man. We cannot pray in love and live in hate and still think we're worshiping God. Putting it in simple language. So more on this dvishita or dvesha. There's a nice verse in Bhagavad Gita where Krishna says, all living entities take birth in this material world because of two conditions. Icha dvesha samutena dvandva mohina bharata. You know the verse? Oh, come on. Icha dvesha samutena dvandva, duality, right? Dvandva mohena, mohina means bewildered. Dvandva mohena bharata. So all living entities take birth in this material world, overcome by these two, desire and hate. And he uses another pair, raga and dvesha, or icha and dvesha. It's another verse saying essentially the same thing. Those are the forces. What's that? I want to enjoy. That's Icha. Or Raga. I want to enjoy. But there's a problem. What's that? There's someone who's already the enjoyer. Dvesha. Somebody has something, and I want that something. So I want to enjoy that something, but there's somebody that's already their property. They're the enjoyer. Krishna is the enjoyer of everything because it's his. And so that's a direct verse from Ishopanishad. Everything comes from him, so he's meant to be the enjoyer of it. And that's devotional service. You engage all things in his service for his enjoyment. That's devotional service. But material is to not see that, is to see, I want to be the enjoyer. Therefore, we get a material body with senses to be the enjoyer of objects of the senses. But that's material life or material consciousness. One desires that something bad happens to the other, sometimes even praise. My dear Lord, let him understand that he's not a devotee. Show him that he cannot do this to me. There's an actual situation that happened in one country. There was a famous preacher, and he was very fond of displaying how good he was as a preacher. And when there was a court case in that country about ISKCON, he put on the internet, Krishna is punishing the other people in my country because of their offense to me. I mean, it's contemporary. It happens. Dvesha or dvishita, active hatred. I wish ill upon others. And when it gets to that stage, it's practically impossible. That is, the earlier stages it's possible to cure. If you can understand what those tendencies are, and then what the antidote for that tendency is. And respect is the antidote, we'll hear as we go forward. Bina darshanaha. Sometimes Prabhupada uses this language, a separatist. Such a separatist who feels no empathy for others' suffering does not get peace. When someone hurts us, what happens? The mind gets absorbed in the hurt and the person who produced the hurt. And it doesn't have to be a physical hurt, it can be a verbal one. They say something nasty, and the mind just keeps going back to that nasty word that was spoken, or words that were spoken. And the mind feels restless and it's hard to concentrate. So we suffer when we do those things, and the person who's on the receiving end, they suffer. No inner peace to perform really what devotional service is. So the main point is, the first stage, second stage are easier. The third stage is more difficult. And then comes the fourth stage. Sadhu Ninda, or Amanina, Amanina, Avamanina. My dear mother, this is Kapila speaking to his mother, Devahuti. Even if he worships me with proper rituals and paraphernalia, a person who is ignorant of my presence in all living entities never pleases me by the worship of my deities in the temple. So, that's pretty strong. And commentary, these two commentators are speaking, this is a more acute stage of the same envy problem. One manifests hatred in a visible way by blaspheming another devotee. One actually starts saying everything one feels about this devotee, and at the same time one feels that they're right by doing so. And they may even say, what's wrong? I'm just speaking the truth. Blah, 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 blah. It happens. This is called the mad elephant defense. If you let an elephant loose in your garden, you got a problem. It'll trample everything in your garden. Whatever was nice is no longer nice. So offense, this kind of offense, blaspheming or vilifying or criticizing a devotee, is very serious. Here's what Krishna says to Uddhava in chapter 23 of the Uddhava Gita, Canto 11. Sharp arrows which pierce one's chest and reach the heart do not cause as much suffering as the arrows of harsh, insulting words spoken by materialists that become lodged within the heart. Arrows of insulting words is much more powerful than arrows. The devotee that we hurt will feel pain for so long, and Krishna is naturally not pleased. So what to do? Here is Draupadi. You know the story. I'll narrate the story quickly. For a number of years, Pandu very much desired, although he was the emperor, he was crowned the emperor of the world, and the capital was Hastinapur, but he liked being in the countryside. So specifically, the Bhagwatam says he went to the Himalayas, and there his sons were born, without all the details of how all that happened. And by the time he died, Pandu died by a curse that came to him. The eldest son was Yudhishthira. He was 16 and a half years old. And then each son successively 1 year longer, 1 year younger, 1 year younger. So they're like teenagers. And Vyasadeva said, now that Kunti, now that Pandu has died, you should return to Hastinapur. So in about 2 weeks from the Himalayas, they made their way back to Hastinapur. And when they reached Hastinapur, everyone, they hadn't seen them in so long. They were so happy. Except for one person. Duryodhana. Because in the absence of Pandu and his sons, he was in charge. Because his father, blind father, couldn't be in charge, so he was. And he was about the same age as Yudhishthira. He was born a little bit after Yudhishthira. So when they came back to Hastinapur, there was a big commotion, and the plan was, we'll divide the kingdom in two. I mean, Yudhishthira was the king, but so they gave him a forest. Thank you very much for a forest. Khandava forest. And then something happened. You know the Mahabharata narration. In the forest, Agni had a problem, a health problem, because it's too much ghee, and he needed some of the herbs that are in the forest, so he tried to devour the forest by forest fire. But whenever the forest fire began, by Agni's arrangement, Indra poured down buckets of rain. So Agni made a request of Arjuna, please allow me to heal my illness. So he did. He protected the front with a whole sheet of arrows, so that the fire Agni could get the fire. Get the herbs for his needs. But within the forest was a demon, Mayadanava. You know the story? Mayadanava? You know the story? Okay. Now you know. At least you know the little bit. Mayadanava came out of the forest and asked Arjuna for protection. So Arjuna protected him. He saved his life from the forest fire. And Mayadanava fell at his feet and said, "You saved my life. Please let me do some service for you." And Arjuna said, "A Kshatriya gives protection to people not to get some reward. That's like bribery. We don't do that. So thank you, but no thank you." And then Krishna said, "Accept his offer, because you're in the forest. He is very gifted. He can build a palace for Kunti, Draupadi, and all your brothers. And he's really good. So it's just allow him to build a palace in the forest." So he did. And it became Indraprastha. And when the palace was built, there was a big festival. And in the big festival, they invited all the devotees, all the Kauravas from Hastinapur, come check out our palace. We're having a big festival. So the nature of that palace was, it was kind of a mystical place, meaning where there's land that looked like water, was water that looked like land. You know that story. So Duryodhana came, was marveling at the structure, and as he was walking across the patio, it wasn't the patio, it was water. He fell in the lake. And you see there's Draupadi. Now, in the Bhagwatam, it says Krishna had come with his queens, and the queens were laughing at Duryodhana having fallen into the water. And Yudhishthira said, "Don't do that. That's not nice. He's a noble person." And Krishna said, "Laugh." Because Krishna wanted the war. Krishna came for the purpose of annihilating demoniac kings, and Duryodhana was one of them. So there's Draupadi laughing also, saying, "Like father, like son." Because of this, the whole war broke. Duryodhana was remembering this all the time. The words of Draupadi lodged in his heart more than any arrow or any weapon or anything. The words choose your words carefully, please, because it can be very detrimental. So here's more on this fourth verse, 21, 22, 23, 24. And we're almost done. How much pain can one inflict upon a living entity by our harsh speech, as Draupadi and others? By this the Lord is never pleased. The Lord does not want anything to do with such a person. That's what he said in verse 24. A person who is ignorant of my presence in all living entities never pleases me by the worship of my deities in the temple. And one won't feel Krishna's presence. If you're not feeling Krishna's presence, how are you going to be happy? Krishna looks away from such a person. We all have some envy because we take birth in the material world. Raga, dvesha, or icha, dvesha, envy. Having a body is like a flag saying, guess what's inside? So, what to do with that fact that's there? Conclusion, see you tomorrow night. Because the next set of verses is the remedy. And the hint is the remedy for this tendency is respect. It's just move in a different direction, in the direction of respect. And there's ways to offer respect, etc., etc. We'll hear about that as we go forward. But so the title of the chapter is Explanation of Devotional Service. And he started with, what devotional service is, what's pure devotional service, the way to come to pure devotional service in 4 verses, and then further amplification of the nature of pure devotional service is that persons don't even, if they're offered by the Supreme Lord liberation of these 5 kinds, they decline. It's so powerful. At the same time, then these next 4 verses, however, there's something that's capable of blocking our experience of the power of bhakti, these 4 stages of envy. So now we're going to hear what to do about that. Any comments or questions?
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, wonderful lecture. Sometimes devotees, they get, they want to confine with you, and they start getting a little bit kind of aggressive towards other devotees when they give descriptions and what they did and what they, talk about their behavior, and they expect you to almost feel like, I guess, to at least listen to them. Yeah.
Join in the party.
And I noticed that if you kind of push away a little bit, or if you try to, especially if these people are kind of senior to you, and you feel like you want to, I don't know, maybe to some degree kind of at least let them know in a subtle way that they might be engaging in some kind of offense, they get
irritated,
and almost feels like maybe I'm committing offense towards them by doing that. Is that possible?
Oh, it's not only possible, it happens, but it's not an offense. A better question is, what should you do when that situation comes? What should you do when that situation, you're confronted with that situation? That's really the right question.
Yeah, yes. That is my question. Yeah.
Okay. Well, there are different things. I would say it depends. But you have a flashcard. And that's the universal flashcard. It applies to any situation. So the scripture says there are 3 things that you can do. You can walk away. You can defeat an argument, or you can appeal to this devotee, that they're hurting themselves, and my hearing is hurting me as well, because if I continue to hear, so they may say, no, I'm not criticizing.
Yeah.
I'm try to make it what it isn't.
Yeah.
But that's okay. Okay. This is me. I'm living by our teachings of our scriptures, our acharyas, and this is how the life I'd like to live. So please honor that. You're not fun anymore, so they won't come to you with stuff like that anymore. But you're not being disrespectful to the person.
Yeah.
You're just, standing behind or standing within the context of what our scriptural teachings are, and proper conduct, and proper speech. It depends on the situation, how you handle the situation, and what you might say. But those are 3 general options. If they continue, you just excuse yourself.
Yeah.
I want to protect myself and yourself both, so I'm gonna walk away. Respectfully walk away, because it's unhealthy and unwholesome and toxic. No, I'm not. Okay. Or defeat them if they say something that's Bhakti Siddhanta, qualified persons are known to do like that. Prabhupada was known to do like that. The person's made some not nice statement. Here's a Prabhupadism. 2. Swamiji, just a reporter interviewing Prabhupada. Swamiji, I saw they picked you up at the Los Angeles temple in a fancy limousine.
Mm.
And I thought that gurus are supposed to be renounced. It was very pointed. And Prabhupada turned it around and said, according to our scripture, that the disciples should offer the best to the spiritual master. They should have picked me up in a golden car, not just a limousine. And the fellow didn't know what to say. Or here's another one. Swamiji, you just arrived by airplane, and I was told that according to your Vedic culture, your customs, that sannyasis don't ride in conveyances, but you're riding in an airplane. Could you explain? In Prabhupada's explanation, he said, if I came in bullock cart, you're moving so quickly to hell I would never be able to catch you. So I came by airplane. No, that's Prabhupada. We not so clever, but depends on the circumstance. That's why it's prefaced, it depends. So the person, the circumstance. In this case, it was blatant, nasty, trying to, defile him. Prabhupada just turned it around. But if it's a like you're saying, the context is a devotee, and someone that's in some ways a senior to you, devotee, by one way or another, there's these 3 options you can look to. But so if you have start with read Prabhupada's books regularly, so you know what's what, and if something like that comes up, you know what that is. It's not in the category of bhakti, and we don't indulge in those things. But you don't want to be disrespectful, but you don't want to indulge in those things, or have them, become more sullied by doing those things. So is there something that I can do or you can do when those situations arise? Okay.
Thank you.
Someone else?
Gurudev, I just have a follow-up on the question that Keshav Madhav Prabhu has asked. So sometimes devotees might just be venting on something that has happened to them. So in that case, hearing that would affect our consciousness as well?
It depends.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends. A lot depends upon the consciousness behind the other individual. The place from which they're speaking, the purpose or spirit from which they're speaking. So it can, certainly if you just passively, docilely listen, then it's going to affect you. So therefore you have these 3 options. One of those, it's not 4. Just stay and nod your head. But if supposing you have some understanding of someone has been through some bad experience, some trauma or something, and it may not even be the immediate circumstance, maybe something that's way back there in their childhood or something, and so this has triggered that. So then you have to think of the welfare of that person, and don't just dismiss them or their emotion. Listen, and then help them take see that thing or that emotion through a different lens. Like, for example, here's one. There's so many examples. Many people, when they do something or say something harsh, it's because there's some hurt inside, and they're expressing the hurt that's inside, and therefore they say or do something that's not nice. But where's it coming from? They're hurting inside. So if you understand that, then you're not, back to your question, are you becoming impacted negatively, karmically, or with an offense? No. But your intention is to help them feel differently than the way that they're feeling. You melt their hearts so that they can hear from you something other than what they're feeling. And that's not easy. But so that if that's a purpose, and you have a relationship with that person that permits that kind of transformation, then you're not gathering some reaction from hearing what they're saying. This is very delicate territory where you're touching on, isn't it? Yes.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, Dandavat Pranam. So I have a question for Maharaj. I do gardening a lot, and if
Gardening.
you're gardening, and if you're with me, you can hear me talk to the worms all the time. Because every time I do the gardening, I dig it, some worms get killed. So some I'm able to move around, but most of them get killed. So
What to do?
yeah.
That's your question?
And gardening is important
Yeah.
for us.
Yeah. Yes, it is. Well, we're going to be touching on that exact topic a little bit later. And that one answer, there's different answers. One answer is that your gardening be in service to Krishna. So in some circumstances where there's some destruction that comes unavoidably, we want to avoid, but unavoidably comes in the course of service that you're doing. There's no karma that goes to you, but rather some benefit will go to that insect or that worm or that whatever, because they're assisting, they're passively at least, they're assisting in devotional service to Krishna. So there's not, karma doesn't come to you, and they may receive some benefit because they've sacrificed their life for something that's meant for Krishna's service, unknowingly. And so that can happen. I'll give it a little example. This, from Bhakti Sandarbha. Unknowing devotional service is very powerful. Jiva Goswami writes. You familiar? Jiva Goswami? Yeah. Bhakti Sandarbha. So, unknowing devotional service is very powerful. He tells a story from Vishnu Dharmotara Purana. There were some mice that had the practice, or a mouse that had the practice of taking ghee from a ghee lamp on a Vishnu temple altar. But unfortunately, one time, his fur caught on fire from the ghee lamp, and his body burned, and he died in the ghee lamp from that flame. In his next life, Vishnu Dharmota Purana says, in his next life, that mouse became a queen. And the queen just had this natural affinity for offering ghee lamps to their altar, Vishnu deity altar. And at the end of her life, she went back to Godhead. So he repeats that. He says, and then he tells a story and then he comes back. Even in a lower than a human form of life, unknowing devotional service can be very beneficial. So the main concern for you as the gardener is you're doing it for Krishna, not something else. Not you want some vegetables, you want some flowers, you want something for your tongue or your senses. You want to make some service for Krishna. And then benefit will go to that entity. So your consciousness will benefit others, even in some circumstance where worms are sacrificed. Prabhupada speaks like this, in general sense. Don't walk across the grass unless you're walking across the grass in service to Krishna. Because living entities and the grass are being squished by your feet and the insects and whatever. Breathing, Jains wear a mask because they don't want, but we breathe and engage in service to Krishna. And so that's not, destruction may come, etc. He's enthusiastic with the microphone. Help him out. Okay. Yes, go ahead. I can hear you.
So sometimes we. Yes.
Go ahead. Just don't. Some people talk with their hand while they're speaking. And doing this.
Okay. So we have some friends who are not devotees. So some kind of functions like a marriage or baby shower functions that they will invite us, which we, since we have a relationship with them, so we may end up going there.
Yeah.
Just to respect their connection also.
Yes.
So in those circumstances, they know that we are Krishna devotee and we don't eat meat and all those stuff. But so how do we keep that part of thing? If you don't take prasadam, they still can't understand, or they'll get some little upset.
You say yes to people with the preamble. I mean, they may know already, but then you spell it out. You're dear to us. You start on the warm note. We're coming because you're dear to us, and this wedding is because you're dear to us. And there is something inside us in relation to you're dear to us, and Krishna is dear to us. So we're very, as we're respecting you, we're respecting Krishna, and this is what Krishna wants. So here's the boundaries. Is that okay? We'll come and we'll but et cetera, but there's certain things that we're not going to do. Is that okay? Ahead of time. If they're friends and you're coming because they're friends, and they'll likely accept. You just please allow us to be who we are. But put it in context of affection and affection. And they can relate. Most people can relate to that. They're not just like your religious fanatics or something. Some without an explanation, it may look like just you're following a rule and you're being disrespectful to our rules. But if it's affection, then it moves to another platform. You follow?
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then
by that leveraging that relationship, It may not bring them closer to Krishna. That if they have respect for you, that's going to nurture their respect for Krishna because you're connected to Krishna and they know it. I just got a letter today, a text message from a devotee that was attending the yatra in Sri Lanka. And he was seated next to another fellow that he never met before. In the course of time, they discussed this and that and the other thing. And then naturally it got to discussing Krishna consciousness. And then the fellow is now regularly visiting a local temple where he lives somewhere. And, they discussed topics from Bhagavad Gita because there was no Krishna in his life before. So it can happen. And if it doesn't happen, you can be very patient and tolerant and so forth, but you also have to be who you are. And that's going to have a spiritual impact on them with respect, with affection, but the affection to Krishna along with affection for them. Okay, go ahead.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. One question from Shalini Mataji.
Okay.
Maharaj, we sometimes see some devotees behaving little harsh with other devotees repeatedly. How to overcome our judgmental attitude towards them?
The behavior is one thing, the soul is another thing. Make a distinction. My response is, how you regard that kind of behavior, the harsh speech behavior, that's one thing. And then how you regard the person, the soul within, that's another thing. So then how do you deal with that your feelings towards that harsh speech? That's the right question. And then depends upon the person. How you process your emotion about their harsh speech. But don't connect that. It's just very fundamental. Don't connect the misconduct or improper speech with the person. It's really important. That's like fundamentally important with life, social life in Krishna consciousness. And, Kapila's teachings of the explanation of devotional service. How do we do it? How do we get to where we want to go when there's something blocking? So don't fall victim to feeling ill towards the person. I'm going to tell a little Prabhupada story. Hopefully she'll understand. Who's asking the question?
It says Shalini Dumala.
Yeah. Okay. That's her name before she was initiated, but that's okay. Okay. Quick. There's a longer version, but the quick version is Bhakti Tirtha Swami was an African American devotee grew up in a ghetto in Cleveland, and his family was very poor. During that period of time, when I was in college, it was a thing that Ivy League schools gave free scholarships to qualified students from the poor communities, black community in particular. So he was given a full scholarship to Princeton University. And he graduated the president of his class and the valedictorian, the top number one achiever academically in his class. He was headed for stardom. During that period of time, that was the destination. But something happened. Some devotees visited the Princeton campus, and he got a Bhagavad Gita, And when he read Bhagavad Gita, it was around the summertime when Prabhupada was in New York, and he came from Princeton to New York and met and observed, had his first experience of being with Prabhupada. And in a short period of time, he became a devotee. And after 1 year passed, he had the opportunity again to speak with Prabhupada and say, Prabhupada, I feel very uncomfortable reporting this to you, but there's racial prejudice in ISKCON. And Prabhupada's reply, it was like, he narrated this, and it was like a really big deal. What's Prabhupada, how is he going to handle this question? And Prabhupada's answer was, that's not very good. But if you're disturbed, then you know better than they are in the bodily concept. That's like, it wasn't a slap in the face, it was cold water in the face. So when you hear, back to her question, when you hear someone speak harshly, they may speak harshly to you, or they may speak harshly to someone else, or whatever the circumstance. Disconnect the behavior from the person. And you can have some feelings about, like, racial prejudice isn't good. It goes completely against the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, the whole teaching of Krishna consciousness. It goes completely against. So it's not okay. It's not okay. But being disturbed by it is another thing. So if from your position, see what it is that you can do to help this person that feels it's okay to speak harshly about others, because they don't have a proper understanding of Scripture and Vaishnava etiquette and Vaishnava conduct, and there's consequences for that person who speaks harshly. You don't have to like rub your hands together and think they're going to get theirs. Ha ha ha. They're going to get punished for this harsh speech. That's for sure. That's the law of nature. You don't have to think like that. But what can I do to help them become free from that tendency? Maybe, like this other, maybe there's some hurt inside. That's why they're speaking harshly. Who knows? But so don't judge the person. See what you can do to help elevate the consciousness of that person to a higher position. Don't depart from respect. And then from that position, that's a position of strength. And then from that position of strength, you can help send some strength to that other person who's in a position of weakness, right? That's why they're speaking harshly. Okay?
Yes, Maharaj. I have one more question.
You?
No, from the online.
Okay, online, okay.
Shiva Prabhu, and he says, Guru Maharaj, in one of the slides, you mentioned that in conditioned stage, we cannot remember Krishna. Then what is a hope for us who are in the conditioned stage?
Okay, that you're reading what the slide said. Yeah. But you know, it's not that we don't. What do? We associate with sadhus. How do you get out of the conditioned state? If you're in the conditioned state, find those that aren't. And not associate with means to serve, hear from, and render service to those who are not in the conditioned stage. You may be reluctant to do that. You know, persons who are proud don't like to be servants. So then, if you're fortunate, you'll find such persons, and those persons are very compassionate, and they'll help you, hold your hand and help you go the next step, so that you can continue being in their association and getting their mercy and serving them. That's, but by sadhu sangha. That's how to.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay. Hey, I was hoping you'd ask a question.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Sometimes at school, actually a lot of times at school, it's like I'm forced to be mean to people.
Really?
Like, it's like, it's just hard for me to not be mean to people. They be mean to me, I be mean to them. And I know Krishna doesn't like that, so it's just kind of hard for me.
Yeah. I feel compassion for you. I wouldn't want to be in your shoes. But, the world is like that. Not just, not all the world is like that, but largely. And as Kali Yuga progresses, it gets more and more so. So is it possible for you to be the exception rather than the rule? Meaning, you can be the person that doesn't get, doesn't push back when you get pushed. They're mean to you, so you're mean to them because otherwise they're going to take advantage of you or something like that.
It's like, so like if I don't be mean, they're gonna be more mean to me until I respond. They will keep it like making names or something until I respond back.
Yeah. Well, the rules of children is a little different in one sense and not so different in another sense. So bhakti is your protection. It's like that's like bhakti shield. Like Prahlad, he was little, but he didn't depart from being Prahlad, and he was protected by bhakti. So you'll be protected. Exactly how it looks like, they don't leave. In one sense, if you're consistent in your bhakti life, just put it in those terms, you're not fun anymore. They'll find someone else who's fun to go pick on and be mean to, so they get somebody to be mean back because they're bullies. And you're just like, you don't have to be you don't have to be a participant in their bullying and be nasty back, because that's how you survive in the cruel world. But it doesn't get so different when you get older. I mean, the ways of mistreatment are different, but the principle is not. So how to protect yourself? Bhakti. Find somewhere persons your age that are devotees, that are genuine devotees, and of persons of good character, and make those persons your friend. And be like that with those persons. When they're with the others that aren't like that, you have to be a punching bag. But I'm not going to participate in this. From your side, I'm not going to be a participant. There's a nice story that Prabhupada tells of a Narada Muni and the cobra. You know that story? I'll tell the story. Narada Muni, you know Narada Muni, right? No?
No.
Okay. He's the one that plays the veena. Narada Muni Bhaja Veena Radhika Ramana Ramane. So
Oh, yeah, I know.
okay, great. So Narada Muni is like a very generous person. And one time he met a cobra, the cobra story. And the cobra raised his hoods and was ready to strike Narada. The Narada preached to him. There's details. But by Narada's association, the cobra became nice. And because he became nice, the cobra found out, then the children started teasing him because they knew he was not going to bite anymore because he's now nice. So they would throw sticks and stones, and they were cruel to him. So next time he saw Narada, he said, "This is what happened. I listened to you, and now this is what's happening to me." And Narada said, don't be cruel, but I didn't say you can't show your hoods. So the kids left him alone. He didn't strike. So for purpose of, similarly, for purpose of keeping your some safety, protection boundary around you, you can externally show something that's like, leave me alone. And they may or may not. They may try to push you further and push you further, but you don't go there.
Thank you.
Okay, it's easier said than done. But your mom can read to you. You find the story of Narada and the cobra, and it's a nice story, and it may help you in your school. Okay, he's fired up to give you somebody the microphone. Anyone else? Okay, looks like we're done. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So we'll see you tomorrow for what to do. What's the solution?